Hi, welcome to the Agent Odyssey. I'm Matt Wyman, CEO and co-founder of Acario. Today, I'm joined by Ioan Iacob, co-founder and CEO of FlowXAI. Ioan has spent more than a decade building enterprise software, and he's done it with the same team. He's had the chance to actually go do more than one startup with the same team. Amazing, something that I think we all hope for. Ioan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about FlowXAI and what you're building right now.
Hey, Matt, and thanks for the invitation. It's great to chat again, I might say. So yes, at FlowXAI, what we're doing is we've been working for the last decade or so to solve the hard part of enterprise AI, which is today translates into making AI agents production grade in mission critical processes and in highly regulated industries. And we started with banking and insurance. I think there's very few companies, if any, that can do that reliably in the enterprise world. Even on simple use cases. And there's definitely no companies that can do it consistently in financial services across mission critical workflows. And we've been as part of the previous company you're mentioning, together with the co-founders and the same core engineering team. Actually, we've been we spent over a decade of specialized R&D investment in how do we build AI for enterprise and for mission critical and highly regulated industries, and that's kind of been our bread and butter. And then at some point we realized that we're sitting on something that is incredibly powerful. We spun off the product business, the FlowXAI. We sold the service business, and then we here we are.
And here you are. Actually, you used a phrase there that I can't help but dive into. As a person who actually led engineering and product in FinTech, I know how hard it is to get to production grade with actual enterprise solutions. And I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on what it means to actually stabilize. What does it actually mean to be production grade when you're involving ML at this level?
I think it's Karpati who introduced this really cool concept several weeks ago on an interview, and I fell in love with it, which is the March of Nines. And his point is that 90% that's a really, really good demo, and 99% that's a perfect demo, but definitely not production grade yet. And then 99.9% you're maybe getting there, but really where you want to be is 99.99% and beyond. And then when we're talking mission critical, even 99.99 might not be enough. This might sound easy or not, but actually the tricky part is that every 9 is exponentially harder than the 9s before. So getting from 90 to 99 is more effort than it took you to get to 90. Getting to 99.9 is more effort than it took you to get to 99, and so on and so forth. And I think this is the unfair advantage that teams that have spent a lot of time in enterprise have today in the AI space.
How so? What's the unfair advantage? That they understand this, or they know how to approach it?
Well, I think everybody's coming at this from from the angle of AI and from the consumer space. And that I might be dating myself here, but it's like the Pink Floyd song, you have to eat your pudding, you have to eat your meat before you eat your pudding. And everybody's rushing in for the pudding and the AI agents and the cool thing, the LLMs, and that's the cool stuff. Nobody wants to do the hard work that's required to actually make AI enterprise grade and production grade for these use cases. And there's this metaphor that I keep using all the time, which is the metaphor of rails and railroads, right? If you think about the American West, trains were an essential part in civilizing and taking civilization to all the corners of the country. But it was not enough that they applied technology innovation of the steam engine. It was actually they needed rails to actually be able to take the steam engine to all the corners of the country, and to do so reliably and at speed. And It's pretty much the same in enterprise AI. Like, of course, you have the steam engine, you have the agents and the LLMs and the agentic capabilities, but then you actually need Rails in order to deploy that. You need a capability to integrate with existing systems. There's 99, probably 0.99% of the data in enterprise still sits there, and it's completely untouched by AI. That's a massive opportunity, but unless you can actually plug into that data, it's very, very hard to really deliver anything meaningful in an enterprise. Of course, you can deliver stuff like what we're calling these peripheral use cases. Like, I don't know, maybe in legal or marketing, but there's definitely, you're not going to be touching the core of the business unless you can really plug into all that data, and you can do it safely and securely, and you can do it in a way that's scalable and that protects the data and protects the data privacy, right? So, and of course, there's governance and controls and scalability, and like there's 1,000 things that, and most of them actually barely touch AI at all. And of course, there's how do you counter hallucinations in AI? Because again, this is not a space where you can afford hallucinations. So there's all these incredibly hard things that are probably unsexy, and that's the concept that we call AI rails that you need in order to deploy AI successfully at scale. So
That resonates a lot with me. I think we're hopefully at the tail end of a POC bubble, a proof of concept bubble, where it's like everything we saw was really just a proof of concept. And I have to be careful with the word just, because a lot of the things we're seeing are amazing, but they're not really reliable enough to use on a regular basis. And so we've have a big bubble of these, and now we're starting to get a few that are coming through. And especially I have the rare chance to talk to a lot of people, and I'm seeing that a lot of folks in engineering are thinking differently about what they're building. But now I think we're starting to see that change on the business side, outside of engineering, as people think about sponsoring agents and they think about adopting agents. I see you nodding.
absolutely.
I'm curious how you see this. How are
Yeah.
you seeing that change?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. It for us, it started back in 2021, and we were talking about synaptic and agentic architectures, and people are like, "Oh, come on, that's science fiction." Then, but we still raised, at the time, a pretty one of the largest seed rounds in Europe, in that year. And then 2022, end of 2022 came along with ChatGPT, and everybody realized suddenly that, oh my God, this AI thing is not just some sci-fi future. It's here. The 2023 we raised this Series A round, which ended up being the largest Series A globally in enterprise software. We went very much heads down into developing technology, and then 2024 we started seeing people experimenting with AI. Experimenting meaning starting to maybe adopt ChatGPT and try it in some limited scope, and then adopt like some peripheral tools. And but it was very much like just putting your small toe in the water to test it. 2025, people were kind of convinced already. They started POCs and they started to try to actually productize things. What we're seeing actually is that, and every single customer that we're meeting has failed quite
Mm.
hard in actually being able to bring something robust to production. And that is because a lot of these products were mostly demos. And yes, everybody was hoping that, there's the fake it till you make it. Like, okay, I'm going to pretend this is a good product. I'm going to put it out there, and then, I'm going to get some money and some sales, and I'm going to fix the product. Unfortunately, it's really not that trivial. AI is definitely not, just another JavaScript code that you fix it, that you run, you scan for bugs and you fix. And I think with your experience, you're one of the a few people that know that very well.
No, it's
So,
definitely
yeah.
not going to just throw it in production, YOLO into production, and then, oh, there's a bug, I'll just go fix it quickly. The
Exactly.
cycles don't
It
work that
requires
way.
like a lot of sophisticated mechanisms. And quite honestly, over the past couple of years, we've literally invented technologies that did not exist before in order to solve this problem. So I think a lot of people have been burnt in 2025 by AI pilots and AI POCs, and I believe there's the MIT study that talks about this. 95% of AI pilots are complete failures, um, but there's a real thirst. There's a real desire for actually using the technology. Like people see it, people know it's there, and it's like this should be possible. This should work somehow. And yeah, we're getting a ton of enthusiasm from people when we sit down with them. And one of the most important things for us with customers is that we actually give them a very good understanding of the robustness that they require from AI solutions before engaging with them. Like we're literally trying to educate our public around AI and machine learning. It's AI now. It used to be machine learning 10
It
years.
used to be machine learning. Now, yeah, now the whole term has changed. The
Yeah.
I, I'm curious how you see those internal failure moments. Do you see those as almost like a net benefit? Like we all need a certain amount of those failures, that scar tissue to learn what's possible and what can be. I know from my own business and my own experiences, quite often the DIY team that tries to do everything themselves, more power to them. But eventually when I'm invited in or we have the conversation, it makes it a lot easier to have the conversation because we can say, hey, remember when you did this? Hey, we cover that for you. It's not as painful. Remember when we did that? Yeah, we can
Yeah.
scale it for you. You
Exactly.
don't have to use as many people. But are you finding the same? Because ML is not trivial. I mean, it's still a wide open space. Knowledge is still very patchy throughout the ML space. How are you finding it when you're having those conversations, especially inside of these large enterprises?
So most of the time is like, yeah, we would, would really love to embrace AI, would really love to bring AI in, but hey, we've used tool X or tool Y or platform Z, and it didn't really work out for us. And then we sit down and say, hey, well, I believe the things that it didn't work out for you is because what you lacked was governance. Is that correct? Well, yes, absolutely. Well, here's how we do governance. And I think that, why it really didn't work for you was because accuracy was not enough. Well, exactly. Well, here's why we're able to give you accuracy like with, industry specific models and all that. So we kind of walk them through like, hey, these were all your failure points and we know them all. And I think that's what builds a lot of trust. And that paired with a lot of industry knowledge, this is something that we've seen is really giving a ton of trust to our customers to try again. And if anything, one of the very surprising things that we're seeing is that by the time we're shaking hands on the deal for the first agents, uh, the same customer is turning around. So like, okay, this is going to get done. We want to see the next five. What are the next five agents that we're going to do together? Because we've built that much trust by that time with their technical teams, with their business teams, with their security teams, and um, with their AI committees. I think especially in financial services, we're seeing this more and more popping off the AI committees.
I, I may be reading between the lines incorrectly, but it also sounds like you're offering a much more holistic solution. And in some respects, I'm going to make the leap to assume that that's mandatory, that's required. You can't just be an agent and then assume that all the other mechanisms exist within the enterprise. You really do need to bring a more holistic, um, not only solution, but that has all the pieces already pre-built, ready for them to adopt. Is that
Yes,
a fair
yes,
assumption?
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and there's two sides to that. There's two sides that are true to that. Actually, it's not two sides of the coin. So, one is the fact that first of all, people don't want point solutions. They're kind of sick and tired, of point solutions. They've been burned by point solution in the SaaS era, and IT ended up managing like 1,000 things with different technologies, different vendors. It's just a complete mess. Like horrible fragmentation. And they've learned that lesson. They don't want to repeat it again. And we've actually had customers coming in and telling us, hey, even if your agents were not just as good as the one use case agentic company would still prefer you guys because you have a platform. So that gives me a lot of a lot of trust that I can deploy and I can build more use cases, not just one. But the other side is actually you cannot build reliable technology when you're focusing on just one use case, because you start cutting corners, for the sake of that use case. And this one thing I don't need to have it generic. I'm just gonna solve it for my use case like this. And then this one thing, I'm not gonna implement like a proper solution. I'm gonna cut corners because I don't need it. I'm just, and then before you know it, you end up trapped in this cage of limitations that you have created for yourself. But it's really, really hard to go back and undo that cage. And we're seeing this actually with a lot of companies that have, focused on a single use case. I think that's been really, really terrible.
It's fascinating. But there's a lot of complexity in those use cases. So then, if you're bringing these solutions in, I'm making assumptions again, but I'm assuming that there are these tensions between. So agents are amazingly configurable, right? You can make agents that are very specific to a business, their practices, their decisions, and I mean, I have a little bit of experience with fintech and mortgage, so I'll go to underwriting and I'll go to the sort of
Yeah.
mortgage journey of processing and closing and all these different pieces that are very complex, and every bank can be different. And yet, at the same time, given what you just said, I would think you have the opportunity to make something more hardened, and you might come. So, how are you balancing the sort of
Absolutely. Well,
customization versus hardened solution?
the question for us has been, how do we make it easy for our customers, and how do we ultimately give them like a very, very robust solution? So we make it easy for them. So we have about, right now on the platform, we have about 180 ready-made agents. And you can think about these agents much more as capabilities that we
Hmm.
can orchestrate around a workflow. And using our workflow engine, we can orchestrate in a deterministic way those agents, or we can orchestrate them in a cognitive way. And I think this is actually something that's super, super important, this flexibility of switching between deterministic and cognitive orchestration.
I like that
So
phrase, by the way.
thank you. So those 180 capabilities is probably all you need. You probably need them in different order for various use cases in the enterprise, right? So for example, you need the capability to cross-check documents and contracts, and you're going to need that in commercial underwriting, where we have like an agentic suite for it. But one of the agent does contracts cross-checking. You need that in mortgages. You need that in commercial underwriting for insurance. So that's one capability that you use slightly differently depending on the flow that you're inserting it in. But it's a pre-made capability that you need. And sometimes, by the way, you might just want to start with that capability, with one agent, one predefined agent that when we come in, our team comes in, and in a couple of days, or at most a couple of weeks, they're gonna tweak it for you and make sure that it's completely optimized for your use case, your documents and everything, and integrated with systems and using the LLMs of your choice, if you don't want to use it from our SaaS, which by the way most customers are doing right now. So I think this is where we found that balance between, hey, let me give you something that's really simple, but let me also give you the power to continue building without being limited in any way.
Do,
But we
does that
really
mean that
found,
they're the builders, or are you doing the assembly based on? Are you working with them to
initially
do
we're
the
there.
assembly?
We and our partners, so we partner globally with companies like IBM and Kyndryl and Entity Data, and um, we're partnering with them, and they're the ones servicing our largest customers most of the time. And then there's customers that we're servicing ourselves, but we want to give them like a complete white glove service, because by the way we can, because our
Yeah,
technology enables us to do so, and without killing ourselves. And
yeah.
actually, we prefer, because we really, really like touching our customers directly, and sitting down with them and working with them, and it's a fantastic learning opportunity for us, and it's also very satisfying
It
to
is,
be.
isn't it? But that feedback loop is amazing. How do you navigate the trust of the pre-made agents when you're working with, and let's just assume you're working directly with the customer. And I'm assuming when you say you're working with the customer, this is just as much the business people as it is an engineering organization. I think I'm from the business perspective, how do you establish understanding and then trust of those different pre-made elements?
Well, I would say that especially for ready-made agents, the trust level is definitely higher because they understand that this is an agent and a piece of technology that encapsulates knowledge that has been polished and has been tested 1,000 times before it reached their hands. It's not something that we just created in the spur of the moment. It's something that we spent a lot of technology expertise, but also a lot of business expertise on building to give something to them that's an incredibly polished, really top world class expertise that's captured in that agent.
So how do they experience it? Like as you're putting it together and they're on the other side, do they see it all at once? Do they see it sort of starting to fill in? What's that interaction like with the cloud of agents that you're assembling?
I love your bringing this up because it's one of the things that we're very passionate about, which is how do you interact with agents? And I think a lot of a lot of people are still thinking that agent interaction is chat interaction or voice interaction. Actually, uh, this is kind of the first thing that a company will tell us when we engage the first time. Like, oh, we want like a chat agent for this or voice agent for this. And chat and voice are cool interfaces. I'm gonna give you that, but they're not the best interfaces for everything. If anything, we believe that they're good interfaces for kind of temporary interactions, and voice interactions just reduced to very simple types of interactions. You're not going to be able to rely like a set of data, set of precise information in voice mode. It's just very very hard to work with numbers that way for most people. So what we believe in is actually in blending AI capability beyond modern user experiences. And there's different ways of representing data based on the different scenarios and different ways of interacting with the data. Sometimes the best way of showing a set of information is by using a bar chart, and sometimes it's a pie chart, and sometimes it's just a table. And um, the beautiful thing is, and again, this is one of the technologies that we're very excited about, and one of the things that we've created in the last couple of years. It's what we're calling this dynamic user experience,
Hmm.
which means that there's no pre-made UI, but you create the UI at runtime based on the way that you're supposed to represent a certain information. And then, of course, and that's something really, really cool. But again, that's not the answer to everything. Actually, again, you need some type of a historical of a fixed view that gives you an anchor, like a historical anchor. We can go and you have like a uh, you have a habit and you're already used to it. You cognitively are familiar with that user experience, so you can find very very quickly exactly what you need there. And I think this goes back to the old expert user experience versus kind of progressive disclosure user experience,
Hmm.
right? Like the plain dashboard where you have every piece of information that you ever need in the same plane, and that's the expert user interface versus kind of progressive disclosure like a wizard where you get served small bits of information one at a time, and that's because people assume you're not an expert user and you haven't done that 1,000 times. So again, like there's all these user experience paradigms, and I think the opportunity is actually to build AI capability behind them, not just to think simplistically about AI as being, a chat experience.
I it's also amazing because even prior to ML and LLMs and all this new world of AI, we already were having some of these tensions, and people who could be very experienced might prefer a sparser page with less information, and other people want a deeper page that has a lot more data. They can sort between the information more rapidly. And as you said, we learn habits. But as we move into this AI world, I love this notion of, and I'll misuse the term information design a little bit, or maybe interaction design a little bit, because there's a new way of thinking about the information and the interaction model to see how these come together, as opposed to just the static user experience. But there are also concepts that have to be learned, and so there is an
Right.
exchange of information that happens through a beautifully designed user experience where it informs you of the concepts. You then learn those concepts, and then you intuit how the next step will work, where to go next, what to do next. But in some
Exactly. Yeah.
respects, with these new systems, you don't need to know that. Like that some of that knowledge and understanding about how to move to the next stage, how to manipulate the data, what the next step is, the agentic system knows that. It knows how to move it forward. What it needs from you is maybe something different. Maybe it's a decision making process. And so now it's about, well, what information do I show you efficiently so you can make a decision? And what's that interaction model as you move from decision to decision to understand how this whole thing goes together? I I don't assume you've solved this, but I am very excited to see people working on it because it
Well, but
seems fascinating.
I think, but this is kind of one of the core concepts that we get very excited about. So there's this idea of an OODA loop, and
Hmm.
it comes from military strategy, if I remember that correctly, and means observe, orient, decision, act. And traditionally, organizations, and especially large organizations, are incredibly slow of moving through that loop. And the reason that's important is because the entire military kind of textbook says is that whoever can progress through that observe, orient, decision, act loop fastest, they're the ones who win the war, the game, the business. And if you think about it, observing, right? Organizations are incredibly slow. Large organizations are incredibly slow just gathering data, even knowing what's the right data to gather from the field in order to observe it. Orient is like, how do you transform those insights into actionable decisions or actionable items that you can then make a decision on? Decision, of course, and this is where actually one of the concepts that we really love about AI is beyond human in the loop. It's the human in control. I believe that's very, very important. But you can make an informed decision. And by the way, in large organizations, very rarely you can make a very confident, informed decision. Like, of course, you get consulting firms doing all the orientation for you and putting a couple of decks in front of you, but are you really super confident about decisions? Was mostly it's because the brand behind the consulting firm, and then acting again takes a while until you implement and
Yeah,
everything. And I believe AI is fundamentally accelerating that OODA loop in an unbelievable way, because suddenly you can observe and orient in literally seconds on huge amounts of data, right?
absolutely.
And then you can present for every decision maker, for every human in control, you can present information in such a way that the decision becomes very, very explicit. You can even recommend a course of action and present the reasons why. By the way, this is something that we do in the underwriting process, and both for lending, mortgages, and for insurance. We what we're doing is we're bringing all that data, putting it in a format, saying, "Hey, here's the action, the recommended action, and here's like all the reasons why we recommend you take that action." And then again, act. That's something that agents can pick up, you know, 80-90% of, at least in today's world. So I think this is an we were talking earlier about unfair advantages. I think organizations that can adopt AI across that entire OODA loop are going to be in a point of an incredible advantage versus their competition. They're just going to be able to go lightning fast through those OODA loops and learn and apply the learnings, and then learn and apply the learnings. And it's not just the speed of doing that, but it's also the compound effect of learning upon learning and improving upon improving. So um, I think the world is going to become, in the business world, the enterprise world is going to become very, very interesting in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree, and I love the learning statement that you used there, because I think that there's the OODA Loop's a great framing for this. What we can do is also look backwards and have the agents gives us analysis going backwards across the OODA, to say, okay, these actions were taken, and look at the decision and look at the outcome and help that as an input to the next cycle of the OODA Loop. That's part of the observe. Whereas today, quite often, it's either not done or it's opinion based. And so the observations are patchy,
Yeah.
in terms of getting around the second time, the third time, the 100th time on the same loop. I would love to ask you, because that's a perfect segue into all of our learnings, what we all need to do to best be ready and more able to embrace this AI change that's coming. So what do you think the human skill is that we need to embrace and develop so we can be more ready?
Well, I actually, it's a really, really interesting question. I don't think it's a skill. I think
Hmm.
it's a mindset more than anything else. So here's my observation. Our head of financial services, who spent many, many years in banks before joining us, can extract out of LLMs and a lot more value, a lot more insightful information than I can ever extract. Our engineers in the engineering team, they're doing really, really amazing things with coding tools, with LLM based coding tools. So what I want to propose to you is that AI is actually enhancing and is a multiplier for whatever abilities we have, and we can absolutely leverage that. But the differentiator is going to be agency.
Hmm.
How do we, like, there's, and again, LLMs and AI today, very, very capable, right? Mind-blowingly capable, if anything. But there's one thing that it doesn't have: it cannot drive things forward, right, in the real world. And I think this is where humans come in. And I think there's going to be a significant gap between people who really want to build and are taking their skills and amplifying them with AI in order to do something, and people who are just going to be very happy, being consumers of AI in a casual way, so to speak, but not driving it with intent and driving it with purpose. So I believe that the level of agency the is really the skill that's going to make the difference in the coming years between people.
Would it be fair to describe sort of active participation versus passive participation? That,
No.
or do you focus more on the engagement and then using it as a force
It's
multiplier? What
active
what
versus
aspect
passive.
is?
It's also like where how big is the vector of your intentionality towards a certain direction, right? Because you can have active participation in many directions, kind of spread yourself thin, or you can have like incredible agency of going in a certain direction and having being very intentional about that, having like a lot of purpose for driving things in a certain direction. I believe this is something that's definitely going to make a big difference between people that have otherwise equal skills.
Yeah, can change the
Oh,
world. A big lever arm, right?
yeah,
Move the world. Agency. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Great conversation, Yen.
Matt, was great spending time together, and thank you for the invitation again.
Thank you.
Take care.